If you have ever wondered what it would feel like to discover your father is a billionaire by spotting his name on the Forbes list of America's richest people, you have imagined the experience of Peter Buffett, the youngest of Warren Buffett's 3 children, who was well into his 20s before he learned the truth about his family's wealth. Peter recalled the moment with bemusement rather than shock. "I'm not kidding. It was when I was in my 20s that my mom and I talked at some point, because there he was, on this list. And we laughed about it because we said, well, isn't it funny? You know, we know who we are, but everybody's treating us differently now." This was not a Hollywood plotline or an elaborate deception. It was the deliberate outcome of one of history's most disciplined approaches to parenting amid extraordinary wealth. While Warren Buffett was building a fortune that would eventually exceed $150 billion, his children grew up in a 5-bedroom stucco house purchased for $31,500 in 1958, walked to public school, had the same teachers their mother once had, and rode the city bus alongside children from families earning the Omaha median income. Peter's friends were as surprised as I was when the family's wealth became public knowledge, a revelation that speaks to the completeness of the Buffett's exercise in deliberate normalcy. In today's episode of Old Money Luxury, we examine how America's most successful investor raised 3 children who had no idea they were rich, why he believes more of our kids are ruined by the behavior of their parents than by the amount of the inheritance, and what happens when those children, now in their late 60s and early 70s, must unanimously decide how to distribute $150 billion in the largest philanthropic mandate in human history. Warren Buffett's financial trajectory represents the most successful long-term investment record in American history. Yet the man who achieved it maintained a lifestyle that gave his children no indication of the wealth accumulating in their father's Berkshire Hathaway shares. Buffett became a billionaire in 1985 at age 55 and briefly claimed the title of world's richest person in 2008 with a $62 billion fortune. Yet he maintained a $100,000 annual salary at Berkshire Hathaway for over 4 decades, a compensation that remained unchanged from 1980 onward, even as the company's market capitalization grew from approximately $400 million to over $1 trillion. For context, his successor Greg Abel now earns $25 million annually, 250 times Buffett's compensation. But Buffett declined every suggestion from Berkshire's board to increase his salary to levels commensurate with his contributions. His spending habits achieved near mythological status precisely because they contradicted every expectation of billionaire behavior. He famously used McDonald's coupons when treating Bill Gates to lunch in Hong Kong, prompting Gates to recall with bemused affection, "You offered to pay, dug into your pocket and pulled out coupons." Buffett possesses a McDonald's Gold Card, granting him free meals at any Omaha location, yet his daily breakfast rarely exceeds $3.17. On days when the stock market performs poorly, he opts for a $2.61 sausage patty. Prosperous trading days merit a $3.17 bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit. The mechanics of how Buffett's 19.9% annual compound returns transformed modest savings into one of history's largest fortunes, while his lifestyle remained unchanged, demonstrating that wealth serves as a scorecard of capital allocation skill rather than a license for consumption. Fills our free Substack newsletter, where the behavioral economics of frugality reveals why the richest investor in America ate the same breakfast as a middle-class retiree. This granular attention to breakfast expenditures by someone worth over $150 billion captures the essence of Buffett's relationship with wealth. The satisfaction comes from compound growth and rational decision-making, not from marginal utility gained through luxury goods. The most striking example of early frugality occurred at the birth of Warren's first child. When Susan Alice Buffett was born in 1953, Warren and Susan lived in a cramped New York apartment so constrained that they converted a dresser drawer into a makeshift bassinet for the infant. And for their second child, Howard, they borrowed a crib rather than purchasing new furniture. These were not hardship circumstances imposed by poverty. Warren had already accumulated significant capital, but deliberate choices reflecting his core belief that financial resources should be deployed for productive investment rather than conspicuous consumption. The children who grew up absorbing these values had no idea their father was becoming one of the wealthiest people on earth. The house at 5505 Farnam Street in Omaha, Nebraska, stood as physical evidence of Warren Buffett's philosophy, not merely a dwelling but a declaration of values made in brick, stucco, and deliberate restraint that his children absorbed every day of their upbringing. When Warren purchased this home in 1958 for $31,500 after renting it for several years at $175 monthly, he was a 28-year-old securities analyst 8 years away from taking control of Berkshire Hathaway. And in today's dollars, that purchase price translates to approximately $336,700, positioning it squarely in the upper middle class range rather than among Omaha's elite residences. The 6,570 square foot Dutch colonial had been built in 1921 by George H. Payne, a real estate magnate, and featured 10 rooms spread across 2.5 stories. An entrance hall, powder room, living room with fireplace, conservatory, dining room, expansive kitchen, breakfast room, 5 bedrooms, a sunroom, 4 bathrooms, and a third-floor recreation space. Warren Buffett still lives there today, nearly 7 decades later, maintaining the same address through the entirety of his children's upbringing and into their late adulthood, a residential permanence that was philosophical architecture rather than happenstance. While his wealth compounded at 19.9% annually and peer billionaires constructed increasingly elaborate compounds, Buffett's address remained unchanged, sending an implicit message to his children that could not have been clearer. A home provides shelter and stability, not status signaling. The neighborhood itself reinforced normalcy. Dundee was and remains a tree-lined middle to upper middle class area where the University of Nebraska sits within walking distance, and the developers had planted 2,000 maple trees along the roadways when the neighborhood was established in 1880. Current real estate appraisals place the property's value between $1.2 and $1.5 million, a sum representing roughly 0.001% of Buffett's current net worth, rendering it a literal rounding error in his financial statements. The children's ignorance about their father's profession extended well beyond financial matters, creating an almost comical disconnect between Warren Buffett's actual stature and his children's perception of his career. Peter Buffett described the enigma. "Growing up, we really didn't know what my dad did. It was quite mysterious." When Susan Alice Buffett filled out a school census form requesting her father's occupation, she consulted her mother, who instructed her to write security analyst, and school officials, unfamiliar with Wall Street terminology, naturally assumed Warren worked in physical security, checking alarm systems or monitoring building access. For 6 years during the 1960s, Warren worked from a spare bedroom in the family home without a secretary or bookkeeper, conducting the entire operation solo. His office contained no computer, no stock quotation machine, no Bloomberg terminal, just Warren, annual reports, and his analytical mind. To children unfamiliar with compound interest or the New York Stock Exchange, their father's daily ritual of reading annual reports might as well have been cryptography. The family's lifestyle reinforced normalcy at every turn, with public education serving as the cornerstone of a philosophy that Warren Buffett has defended with explicit conviction throughout his career. All 3 Buffett children, Susan Alice, born in 1953, Howard Graham, born in 1954, and Peter Andrew, born in 1958, attended Omaha public schools from kindergarten through high school graduation, riding the school bus alongside children from across Omaha's economic spectrum, and walking to neighborhood schools in elementary years, following the same routes their mother, Susan Thompson Buffett, had taken a generation earlier. Warren Buffett has been unwavering about this commitment. If you do not have a good public school system, equality is a joke. All of my children went to public schools. He continued with characteristic directness. Every member of the Buffett family in Omaha has gone to a public school. They went to the same school that their mother attended, and they attended the same high school she went to. The high school all 3 children attended, Omaha Central High School, carries its own distinguished history as the oldest active high school building in Omaha, originally known as Omaha High School, when it opened in 1859 in the Nebraska Territory Capitol building. The current building, designed by architect John Latenza Sr., was constructed between 1900 and 1912 in the French Renaissance Revival style, featuring limestone, maple floors, oak woodwork, and cast-iron newel posts, and as of the 2023 to 2024 academic year, enrolled 2,674 students from across Omaha's racial and economic spectrum. This diversity was precisely the point. Susan Alice Buffett graduated from Central in 1971 and later served on the board of directors of the Central High School Foundation, with her direct involvement facilitating an extensive land exchange that culminated in the construction of Siemens Stadium on the campus. The Buffett children did not receive cars when they turned 16, despite their father's capacity to purchase fleets of vehicles. Instead, they continued using public transportation or rode in Warren's blue Volkswagen Beetle, a vehicle that became almost as famous as its owner. The household operated on a chore-based allowance system recognizable to any middle-class American family. The children earned their spending money by completing age-appropriate tasks rather than receiving unconditional allowances dispensed freely because father could afford it. Nothing in their daily experience signaled that their family circumstances differed materially from classmates. They did not vacation in Europe while friends stayed home, did not wear designer clothing while peers shopped at JCPenney, did not arrive at school events in limousines while others took city buses. Susan Thompson Buffett reinforced these values through her own behavior, actively involving herself in volunteer work, hosting exchange students from diverse backgrounds in the family home, and pursuing her passion for singing rather than living as an idle billionaire's spouse. Warren explained the cumulative effect. Our kids had a very normal growing up. They didn't witness us moving into increasingly extravagant residences or traveling by private jet. They took the bus to school. This consistency across decades created an internalized baseline of normalcy so durable that when one of his children finally received a meaningful financial gift, it would become a test of whether the values had taken root, with $500 million in potential future wealth hanging in the balance. In 1977, when Peter Buffett turned 19, he received what would become a life-defining test of the values his parents had instilled, an inheritance from the sale of his grandfather's farm, which Warren had converted into approximately $90,000 worth of Berkshire Hathaway stock, roughly 840 shares trading at $107 each. Warren made the terms brutally explicit with a clarity that precluded misunderstanding. It was clear that I should not anticipate anything further. This was not seed capital for a trust fund that would receive periodic replenishments or a down payment on lifetime financial support. It was the entirety of Peter's personal inheritance from his father. Full stop. End of discussion. Peter faced a consequential binary choice whose ramifications would compound across his entire life. Hold the shares and watch his net worth compound at Berkshire's historic rate of 19.9% annually, or sell the shares and pursue his nascent passion for music, a field characterized by uncertain financial returns, intense competition, and no family precedent for success. In 2025 dollars, that $90,000 inheritance would have been worth approximately $500 million had Peter retained the shares through present day, a sum that would have placed him comfortably among America's 500 wealthiest individuals without lifting a finger, making a single business decision, or contributing any productive value to society. Peter Buffett sold every single share. He dropped out of Stanford University after his freshman year, rented a modest studio apartment in San Francisco, and invested the proceeds almost entirely in recording equipment, mixers, synthesizers, microphones, soundproofing materials. I didn't want to follow that path of quickly burning through the inheritance, Peter explained, noting that he implemented a disciplined monthly budget designed to extend the capital for several years while he developed his craft. Peter's framing of this decision reflects a sophisticated understanding of wealth. I don't regret it for a second. I bought time. Those hundreds of unpaid hours fiddling with recording gear would have been impossible without the financial runway his inheritance provided. Without those countless unpaid hours spent tinkering with my recording equipment, I would not have discovered my unique sound or style. The musical breakthrough came serendipitously when a neighbor connected him to an animator seeking music for a newly conceived 24-hour music video cable channel called MTV. Preparation, meeting opportunity in the Seneca sense. The MTV connection opened doors to composing for the Oscar-winning 1990 film Dances with Wolves, winning an Emmy Award, releasing 15 studio albums, and co-chairing the Novo Foundation with his wife Jennifer Buffett. Warren Buffett's reaction to his son's choice revealed the underlying purpose of the inheritance structure. Rather than expressing disappointment, he validated the decision, noting that by the time his children learned of the family's wealth, the kids had developed by then. Peter had traded $500 million in unrealized gains for a life of meaning, impact, and authentic achievement. And his father's philosophy about inheritance would eventually crystallize into a maxim that estate planners worldwide now quote as gospel. Warren Buffett crystallized his wealth transmission philosophy in a single maxim that has since been quoted by estate planners, family office advisors, and wealth management professionals worldwide. Leave the children enough so that they can do anything, but not enough that they can do nothing. When Susan Thompson Buffett died unexpectedly in 2004 from a cerebral hemorrhage at age 72, her estate was valued at approximately $3 billion, making her the 153rd richest person in the world at that moment. And she directed 96% of that fortune to the family's foundation, while carving out $10 million for each of the 3 children. Warren described these gifts as the first large gift we had given to any of them. A staggering statement given that the family's net worth had exceeded $30 billion by that point. The timing was deliberate and psychologically sophisticated. By 2004, the children were aged 47, 50, and 53, well into middle age with established careers, marriages, and value systems that wealth could not corrupt because identity formation had already completed. Susan Alice Buffett was running the Sherwood Foundation and had taught in inner-city Omaha schools. Howard Graham Buffett was farming thousands of acres in Illinois and Arizona while serving on Berkshire Hathaway's board since 1992. Peter Buffett had released multiple albums, won an Emmy, and established himself as a composer. Warren's explicit rationale revealed years of observation. After much observation of super-wealthy families, here's my recommendation. Leave the children enough so that they can do anything, but not enough that they can do nothing. He witnessed ill-conceived wealth transfers by political hacks, dynastic choices, and yes, inept or quirky philanthropists, cementing his conviction that massive inherited wealth frequently erodes ambition, stifles personal growth, and generates family discord. Rather than personal fortunes that could be spent on yachts and indulgence, Warren gifted his children something more durable: purpose-driven foundations with substantial capital to deploy toward meaningful impact. Susan Alice leads the Sherwood Foundation, which has given over $2 billion since 2001, with more than 70% of grants supporting Omaha-based nonprofits focused on breaking cyclical poverty through early childhood education. Howard Graham leads the Howard G. Buffett Foundation, which gives over $500 million annually to global hunger relief, conservation, and agricultural research through farms in Illinois, Arizona, and South Africa. Peter co-chairs the Novo Foundation with his wife Jennifer, focusing on gender equality, girls' education, social justice, and indigenous communities through partnerships emphasizing systemic change. Buffett's emphasis on parental modeling over inheritance quantum represents his deepest conviction. I think that more of our kids are ruined by the behavior of their parents than by the amount of the inheritance. These foundation apprenticeships were deliberate preparation for what would come next. For nearly 2 decades, Warren Buffett's philanthropic strategy appeared settled. In 2006, he pledged to donate 85% of his Berkshire Hathaway shares, then valued at approximately $43 billion, primarily to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where he served as one of 3 trustees alongside Bill and Melinda and donated more than $43 billion over 15 years. This arrangement unraveled following the Gates divorce announcement in May 2021, and shortly afterward, Buffett resigned as trustee, stating diplomatically that his physical participation is in no way needed to achieve these goals, though the timing suggested discomfort with the foundation's governance turbulence. In June 2024, he announced definitively, "The Gates Foundation has no money coming after my death." In November 2024, Warren unveiled his revised estate plan in a characteristically candid letter to Berkshire Hathaway shareholders. His remaining fortune, now estimated at over $150 billion, will flow to a new charitable trust overseen by his 3 children, with unanimous decision-making required on every distribution and at least $15 billion deployed annually, representing approximately 4% of all U.S. charitable contributions. Warren's rationale reflected hard-won wisdom. "Ruling from the grave does not have a great record, and I have never had an urge to do so." He recognized that the world his children will inhabit differs dramatically from the one he experienced, requiring adaptive rather than prescriptive philanthropy. They may well need to adapt to a significantly changing world around them. In a January 2026 CNBC interview representing their first joint public appearance discussing the estate plan, Howard, Susan, and Peter Buffett projected humility rather than bravado about the immense responsibility ahead, the largest philanthropic mandate ever entrusted to a single family. Peter candidly admitted he initially sought to opt out when learning of the plan's scope, acknowledging the magnitude felt overwhelming. Susan described it simply as just an immense sum of money. Howard noted, "It's something that has never been done before, especially not by a family." The siblings explicitly ruled out any Succession-style drama, referencing the HBO series about a dysfunctional billionaire family tearing itself apart over inheritance, emphasizing their collaborative relationship and aligned values developed over decades of running separate foundations with modest staffing. Warren expressed complete confidence. "I know them well and have complete faith in them. Observing my children from 2006 to 2024 has allowed me to see their growth in understanding large-scale philanthropy and human behavior. They appreciate financial comfort, but are not obsessed with wealth." He added that their mother Susan, who instilled philanthropic values before her death, would be immensely proud, as am I. The greatest inheritance Warren Buffett will leave his children is not the $150 billion trust. It is the decades of modeling, the character formation that occurred before wealth awareness, and the conviction that privilege demands proportionate responsibility. Whether historians judge the Buffett children's philanthropy as successful will shape institutional giving for generations, but the preceding decades offer an unambiguous lesson. The way children discover they are rich matters as much as the riches themselves. And now we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Do you think Warren Buffett's approach of concealing wealth from his children until their identities were formed represents the gold standard for raising heirs? Or does the deliberate deception, however well-intentioned, create its own psychological complications? We look forward to the discussion below, and thanks for joining us for another episode of Old Money Luxury. Cheers.